Lesson 88. Hello again. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how you can create photo puzzles from your own photos. But before I begin, I must tell you this process requires some experience in Adobe Photoshop and a foam cutter. I'll show you the step-by-step process in Photoshop, and you can make your own foam cutter if you or somebody you know has basic woodworking skills. More about that later. I also need to point out that since making this video, I have found a better choice of foam for the project, which you can see here. The foam I used in this picture is much denser and thinner than the foam I used in this video, which you can see here. As with any art making process, it's always a good idea to experiment with media. No matter what foam rubber you use, I guarantee you that this project is really fun, and as soon as you make your first puzzle, you're going to want to make another one. Here's an overview of how to begin. Before I begin, I just need to tell you that this is what I wrote particularly for my students, so there will be some modifications to relate it to this podcast. At any rate, you want to open whatever image you're going to use in Photoshop, and then you're going to open a puzzle template, which you can find online by doing a search, and put that in there. Now you may have to invert the template. In other words, if your puzzle pieces are black on white, which is what you usually get, you'll have to invert the image to make it white like puzzle pieces on a black background. Okay? Like I said, this isn't for everybody. If you struggle with that, just let me know and I'll help you out through it. Okay? Next, you want to select all of the puzzle template and copy to the clipboard. Paste the puzzle template over your image. Size the template to cover all of your image you want for your puzzle, and you want to make sure you don't crop out the borders. You want to keep those borders there. Then you're going to choose the screen and layer options palette, decrease the opacity to around 50%, and save the image as, again, this is for my students, but save the image. Okay, now I'll be showing you that in detail right here. Okay, here I'm opening the image into Photoshop. I'm going to use my 67 Volkswagen, which I've been restoring. Love this thing, and I figured why not make a puzzle out of it, right? Okay, so I'm opening it into Photoshop. And next thing I'm going to do after I get it in Photoshop is bring in the template. Okay, so bring in the template, the puzzle templates that you've gotten online. And you might want to invert it first. Okay, so let's pause right here. You can see that the puzzle pieces are white. Okay, and when you get the template, it will be black outlines of the puzzle pieces on white. So you just go up to Image, Adjustments, Invert. Okay, in Photoshop. Then you will have the opposite. You'll have what you see here. Then you take this template. Now, let's talk a little bit about the templates too. Depends on what you pick. I picked one that just has a few pieces. The puzzle I showed you at the very beginning had a lot more pieces. Okay, so that just depends on the template. But to get started, I would get one that doesn't have a lot of pieces until you get good at this. Let me tell you, this takes a little bit of practice doing this. There's a curve. This is an advanced project. It's not going to be for everyone. But I guarantee you, you're going to like this if you can handle all of the what is needed to do it. Okay, all right, so now I've got the template over the image. I can see the borders and the entire template is there. Okay, so you may have to do some resizing and so forth to get this all together. You don't want to lose the pieces of your template. All right, so now I go ahead and I'm now going to go to the screen option in the layer options. And as you can see, the screen option actually makes the black disappear, leaving just the white tracings of the puzzle. That's how that works. It's pretty cool. Okay, and here I'm decreasing the opacity. All right, by doing that with the opacity, that way the outline of your pieces, the white outline of each puzzle piece, is not too white. You want to be able to see it, but you don't want it too much because, even though you're going to be cutting over this, you don't want it to show up because you're not going to be able to go perfectly over every one of these lines anyway. And you'll see what I mean as we move along here, that the dimmer it is, the better. Okay, so we go ahead and do that. And now at this point, I just want to go ahead and save this. All right. So you save the piece, and then you're going to print it out. Okay. You're going to take that image and print it out. But before you print, you want to be sure that you use either tracing paper or vellum paper. It's a very thin paper. Why do you want a thin paper? Because if you use thick paper, you're trying to burn, because a foam cutter is actually a very thin piece of wire, and you'll see that here in a little bit, that cuts through the foam, and it's also going to have to cut through the paper after you've assembled everything. All right. If that paper's too thick, to get the temperature to cut that, you're going to fry the paper. Okay. It's going to get really charred, and you will get some charring with this as it is, depending on your foam. But that's part of the process. Okay, so don't worry about that. Okay, enough said about that. All right, so now I've gone ahead and saved it. Here's your overview of what we're going to do. You're going to mount it on a piece of foam rubber after you've printed it out on the vellum in your inkjet printer. Photo mount spray. You want to use photo mount spray, and make sure to hold the can pretty far away from the surfaces, as you'll see right here. All right, so now I've got my piece of foam rubber there, and this is actually styrofoam, but that's yet another story. But anyway, same deal. You're going to spray both surfaces with 3M mount or some kind of really good spray adhesive. You don't want to get too close though. You don't want to saturate it. All right, so I did the back of the picture. All right, and now I'm going to spray the foam. All right, doesn't have to be a ton, but you want to get a nice consistent adhesion there. All right, again, this is one that has more pieces. This video is kind of pieced together, but that's okay. You got the idea, and who cares? There, I'm smoothing it out and making sure it's nice and flat. All right, so now we're here for the fun part. You've got your puzzle pieces on your picture. You got everything ready to go, and now it's time to cut. Okay, so I'll show you the picture here, but again, here's an overview. Again, this is a tutorial for my students, and it helps them to see what they're going to do before they do it, and it'll probably help you too. All right, so trim off the excess foam rubber using the foam cutter. All right, note the wire that gets very hot and avoid touching it. You'll see it here. You're going to see that paper smoke, as a matter of fact. Cut out the first puzzle piece, and following these tips, you want to avoid pressing down on the foam rubber. Okay, move fairly quickly to avoid excessive melting. If you don't follow the lines perfectly, don't worry about it. It's going to happen, but it doesn't make any difference, because if you cut one piece a certain way, the adjacent piece is going to fit the same way. It's going to fit perfectly. All right, so that's okay. Remove the first piece and move it to the right, and then cut out the next piece. And then you want to be sure to assemble the puzzle pieces as you move along. Otherwise, you're going to have a big puzzle that you're going to put together, and that's the whole idea of this, right? But it's a lot nicer if you already have it all made than deconstruct it and then start over and have fun putting your puzzle together. All right, so there's that. So here is a nice picture of the foam cutter. If you Google foam cutters online, you'll see some that are for sale. There's some homemade ones. This particular person, I really liked his design. He did a lot more professional job than I did. But at any rate, this is what I came up with. It's basically just wood and a metal rod, and this is called nichrome wire. That's the very thin wire that heats up. This is a 12-volt power supply. Now, this is a variable thing. So in other words, I can the voltage, I can choose it by twirling a knob and getting the voltage I want. Is this thing expensive? Yes. Okay. It's kind of expensive, although they make some that aren't as sophisticated as this. However, with that said, you can just get a single equivalent of about 6 or 7 volts, and you'll probably be fine with it. All right, so if you can just find a 6-volt power supply, like you get, how like you recharge things like tools and stuff like that, like drills and stuff like that. You can get one of those things and use that. Again, like I told you before, this takes some building skills too. All right, so this may be too much for you, and that's fine, but I'm sure some of you out there can't wait to get started on this. Okay, you love a challenge, right? Okay, so at any rate, get your power supply, and you can figure out how to make that by Googling it, and get a YouTube video that'll show you in detail how to make a foam cutter, or if you have some money, just buy one. All right, it's up to you. There's cheap ones out there too. Depends on what kind you get. All right, enough said about that. So now, here I am. I've got there's my 12-volt supply. I've got this running here. This is the nichrome wire. All right. So this thing gets hotter than hot. All right. You do not want to touch that with your fingers. I've got this running 7 volts. Okay. That power works really good for this particular foam, and it doesn't burn the paper too much. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. Right now I'm just trimming the edges off. As you see, I'm moving pretty quickly. This thing cuts right through that foam rubber and makes a nice clean cut. All right, so here's a close-up of me actually cutting a piece. I've already done 2 here. I'm doing the 3rd. All right, so you can see I'm going to follow right along the white puzzle piece. I'm going pretty quickly, and you do not want to inhale this smoke. It doesn't smell bad and so forth, but I have a little fan going to kind of keep it moving, that's all. All right, so you don't want to breathe those fumes. Definitely not a good idea. Took the piece off. Okay, there's the piece I just cut off. Fits right in there. All right, you keep cutting it, go along until you get your whole puzzle done. After you finish, you could put it on a piece of like mat board or cardboard that has some 3M spray on it, just a light coating, and that'll hold it together, because depending on your foam, it's not going to want to fall apart. All right, so that is how you make a photo puzzle. So I hope some of you will give this a try, and as I said, if you have any questions, just email me, and I'll be more than happy to give you any tips I can. Well, that's about it for this lesson. Until next time, goodbye.